You look at your portfolio, same stocks, same companies you bought last year, same feeling of not having done anything. But you did. While you were looking at the prices, billions of dollars had silently moved in the market. Not where the headlines were, not where the hype was, but rather 7 specific areas that had remained unnoted by the general public. You just hadn't noticed. The reason why the largest moves in the market rarely begin as loud signals is because they begin in silence. Think about the 2007 crash. While everyone was buying homes, a select few were shorting mortgage bonds. Michael Burry knew years before the crash that it would happen. By the time it did happen, the smart money had already made their profits and exited the market. Rotation works in the same way. Wall Street rarely acts on news. It acts on what the news will be 18 months from now. This is why prices are always forward-looking. They don't react to the present. They react to what is expected to happen in the future. This is why it is so important to understand what the early money is up to. By the time the news breaks on television, the people who put their money in first have already reaped the majority of the rewards. So what are the early signs pointing to? Let's start with the first sector, utilities. For years, this sector had been stagnant. No one wanted exposure to it. It barely made returns above inflation. But if you look closer, you will still see that institutional money has been flowing into the space. What gives? The reason institutional investors are buying utilities has nothing to do with the yield. It has everything to do with electricity. The rise of artificial intelligence and data centers requires exponentially more electricity than before. Someone has to provide it. Someone has to build the infrastructure around it. Wall Street knows this, which is why they have been rotating into the utilities long before the general public even realizes the increased demand. The second sector is industrials, specifically those related to the grid and electrification. The reason why the early money is buying industrials has everything to do with the rotation into utilities. The industrial sector is the backbone of any large-scale infrastructure project. Think of the railroad industry at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. Before trains could transport goods across the country, the railroads had to be built. The same concept applies to the electrification of the modern economy. Before self-driving cars can run on highways, the roadways have to be built. Before data centers can be built, the power grid has to be upgraded. Capital will flow into the constructors before it flows into the end users. This is why it is so important to understand the rotation between sectors. The third sector is healthcare, not pharmaceuticals, not biotech, medical devices and diagnostics. An aging population in every developed nation will require exponentially more medical procedures than before. This has nothing to do with interest rates or inflation. It has everything to do with demographics. Demographics rarely change. In fact, they are one of the most reliable forces in economics. Predictable demand is one of the best things for patient, institutional capital. The fourth sector is defense and aerospace. Geopolitical tensions rarely make headlines for long, but the defense budget rarely decreases for extended periods of time either. Defense spending commitments made years ago are beginning to see their fruits of labor now. Institutional money knows this, which is why they have been rotating into defense contractors long before most people even realized there was a rotation happening. The fifth sector is regional banks. Not the big national banks, the small regional ones. Years of increasing interest rates has taken a toll on the regional banking sector. But now that the Fed has signaled its intent to pause hikes, the earnings story for regional banks immediately improves. The same money that was hurt by higher rates will benefit massively from the pause. This is why institutional money is rotating into the space before it becomes mainstream. The sixth sector is agriculture and water. Farming and water infrastructure might not sound very exciting, but it is one of the most reliable sectors in human history. Every human being on Earth requires food and water to survive. No matter how the economy does, food and water will always be necessary. In fact, Warren Buffett has a large position in farmland, which is a testament to the reliability of the sector. It is one of the few investments he has made that he will never regret. The seventh sector is semiconductors, specifically in industrial and automotive applications. Everyone knows about the booms in semiconductors from the rise of personal computers and smartphones. But few people are paying attention to the rise in semiconductors that power industrial machinery and automobiles. This is one of the best places to put money because it is where the next wave of innovation will take place. Now let's analyze why these 7 sectors have rotated. The reason why the 7 sectors rotated have very little to do with excitement. Daniel Kahneman has studied the psychology of finance for decades. And one of the things he has noticed is that humans are often irrational when it comes to finance. Specifically, he noticed that people tend to chase what excites them rather than what is likely to succeed. Excitement and likelihood are rarely found in the same place. That is why the general public is so heavily invested in the sectors that are already saturated. Everyone is excited about social media stocks, but institutional money is quietly rotating into the unglamorous ones that power the glamorous ones. Benjamin Graham warned about the dangers of speculation nearly a century ago. He noted that the market was populated by two types of investors, those who chased momentum and those who valued fundamentals. The rotation that has happened in the market recently is a sign of the latter type of investor at work. They are rotating into the fundamentals before the momentum investors even realize there is a rotation happening. You may be wondering why this happens so often. The reason why this happens so often is because markets are forward-looking while human nature is backward-looking. This is why most investors find themselves buying high and selling low. They are reacting to news that has already happened, while institutional money has already rotated before the news even broke. Richard Thaler has spent his life studying the relationship between human behavior and economics. He has often noted that the biggest disconnect between humans and economics is the fact that humans rarely behave rationally. Institutional investors try to behave rationally by buying what has value and selling what does not. Most individual investors behave emotionally by buying what they think has value and selling what they think has no value. It is not new information that institutional money makes the biggest moves in the financial markets. It is new information that you can follow their lead without buying into the hype. During the financial crisis of 2008, the recovery in certain sectors of the economy began long before the general public realized the crash was over. The data began to show signs of improvement before the general public even realized there was a crash in the first place. The people who paid attention to the capital flows rather than the news were the ones who bought the most shares at the lowest prices. The people who waited for confirmation from the news paid a much higher price for the same shares. Now that you understand the rotation taking place in the market, let's discuss the implications. The 7 sectors that have rotated are not random. They are a result of predictable forces in economics that rarely change. Institutional money tends to flow where demand will persist despite the ebb and flow of public opinion. This is why the 7 sectors that have rotated have done so in a particular order. Your job as an investor is to understand the forces that are at work. It is not necessary to follow the hype. It is much more important to understand why institutional money is doing what it is doing. You look at your portfolio again, same stocks, same companies, same feeling of not having done anything. But now you understand the early signs, and you are much closer to understanding what the institutional investors see in the market.